If you watch this channel, it seems like a fairly reasonable assumption that you like video games, or games in general. And as such, many of you might be interested in game design or making your own games. This was true of myself, because in truth, I don't actually play video games very often, but the creative processes of designing a game are extremely fascinating. It's always interesting to do a deep dive into a game to see how things work and analyze both mechanics and stories. However, studying game design teaches you one thing very quickly. Video games are pretty hard to make. Fortunately, if you're ever working on a game design team, there'll be a mix of artists, level designers, coders, and so on, meaning that you don't have to do it all on your own. But the work of an artist, a level designer, and a coder only come when you have an idea. The idea is the epoch of video games. But the truth is, coming up with ideas, especially new ideas, is not an easy thing to do. And even when an idea is formed, what if it isn't any fun? What if it's not engaging or interesting in some way? This process is so challenging that it's honestly amazing that we have any games at all. Not to consider the absurdly vast array of amazing games that are coming out all the time nowadays. So how do games get made at all? Well, the answer is ideation. It literally has the word idea right in there. This is the process of taking an idea and pounding at it, making changes, adding things, balancing things, changing even more things, until you get something that feels complete. One of the challenges that people face when trying to make a game is trying to come up with initial ideas that are fully complete and complex. If you do this, you may come up with something that's too bloated, or may find yourself scrapping nearly every idea as it doesn't quite work. That's why the first idea has to start out small. So, let's take an example, one that I actually used for a class project recently. Let's take the game of tic-tac-toe. Everybody knows how to play tic-tac-toe, but the problem is that the player that goes first, if they know what they're doing, can guarantee to at least tie every single time. That is to say, the player who goes first, if they are trying, can never lose. So that's a pretty big problem. Let's fix it. Alright, but how? Okay, so starting off, I had two ideas. One, to let the board go around the edge like a cylinder. This adds a new layer of strategy, and it prevents the game from ending in a tie. The problem? Well, this has already been done before. So my next idea was to let players move an opponent's piece in their turn instead of playing their own piece. Alright, let's try it out. Okay, so in practice this also doesn't work, but I like where it's going, so let's take this idea and iterate off of it. I like the idea of moving a piece, but as it is, it's unfair and unbalanced. So what if instead of moving a piece, players could swap two of their adjacent pieces? This seems like a better idea, but actually it's much worse. Player 1 has a distinct advantage to the point where they would have to try in order to lose. The idea is a failure then, as it doesn't solve the problem we set out to solve. Alright, but I still feel like I'm getting somewhere with this. What if we limited the swap power? What if we removed diagonal swapping, allowing players to only swap vertically or horizontally adjacent pieces? Well, the same problem keeps coming up. Player 1 is winning every single time, so this swapping mechanic isn't working. What if I went back to move an opponent's piece? In my first iteration, we were only moving the pieces to another spot on the board. What if we removed the piece entirely? Okay, so now we have something interesting. I like where this is going. The problem now is that the players could just move the pieces back to where it was originally removed from, and if piece removing is unlimited, then we might never actually finish a game. Fortunately, these are two problems that are very easy to solve. I'll just put in two new rules. The removed piece must be put in a new spot, and players can only remove a piece on one turn in a row. Alright, I think we did it. I started playtesting this version heavily, and found that it was fairly balanced and strategic. Those who I played with said it was fun, and that's a big one, so I wrote up a rulebook and turned in this assignment. I have a copy of this rulebook and we'll put it in the description of this video if you want to play it for yourself. The point is, your first idea is probably pretty bad. And that's okay. Bad doesn't mean it's devoid of quality. It means it's just not completely thought out. It's like you're a log carver with a large piece of wood in front of you. As it is, it's not interesting. Ideation is the process of carving until you either have a complete project or a bunch of wood chips. Sometimes you can work through an idea and you might discover a problem. The goal is to find a solution to that problem, even if it's a difficult one. Oftentimes, coming up with a solution will not only fix that problem, but many more problems as well that you may encounter. But sometimes, whether it's a time constraint or a particularly challenging problem, there isn't a solution, or at least not one that's easy to find. And that's okay. If you can't go forward, go back. Try something new. No matter what the problem is, there is always some sort of solution. That's why making a game is so hard. Coming up with an engaging idea is very hard. And that's why ideas have to start very broad, very general. Then we work at that idea and we make it into something, and then we add things and we come up with solutions. And that's the stuff that actually forms the game. But at the center of the game, there's an identity, and everything that we added throughout development was in service of that identity. It's a reasonable desire to want to throw in any interesting mechanic you can think of into any specific game. But sometimes it's better to hold on to interesting mechanics for later projects, because the solution to any problem is hardly ever throwing more mechanics at the wall. Game design is a matter not of coming up with clever ideas, but coming up with clever solutions to difficult problems. A bad idea can turn into something special if you're willing to pour into it.